A homeless woman with nothing left to live for finds a terrified little girl hiding in the rain. But when she dials the number, the child whispers, the man who answers isn't just a father. He's the most feared mafia boss in Chicago. What happens next? It's a story of danger, love, and redemption, where saving a child drags one broken woman straight into the devil's world. This is The Beggar Who Saved the Kingpin's Daughter. Before we jump into the story, drop your flag or country in the chat. Let's see who's representing tonight. Chapter 1. The Girl in the Rain. Rain poured down on Chicago's streets like the sky had decided to wash the whole city clean. Mara Quinn sat under the rusted awning of an abandoned store, hugging her thin jacket close around her. The cold had a way of finding every open space, crawling into her bones. She hadn't eaten since yesterday morning, and her stomach twisted in protest. She told herself she'd sleep once the rain eased up. Sleep meant she wouldn't feel the hunger or remember what she used to be, a trauma nurse, steady hands, clean scrubs, saving lives. That woman didn't exist anymore. The system had crushed her, stolen her license, her career, her home. Now she was just a ghost in a city that didn't care. A sound cut through the rain, a soft sob. Mara frowned. Maybe it was a cat. But then she heard it again, a child's cry, sharp and desperate. She stood, pushing her wet hair out of her face, and followed the sound down the narrow alley beside the store. The alley was dark, lit only by the yellow glow of a flickering streetlight at the far end. Trash cans overflowed. Water pooled on the cracked pavement. And then she saw her. A little girl, maybe 6 years old, huddled behind a dumpster. Her small arms were wrapped around her knees, her white dress soaked and smeared with dirt. Her long, dark hair clung to her face. She was shivering. "Hey," Mara's voice came out soft, careful. "Hey there, sweetheart. You okay?" The girl jerked up, eyes wide and terrified. They were the kind of dark brown that almost looked black, huge, scared eyes that made Mara's heart clench. "Don't hurt me," the girl whispered. Mara immediately knelt down, hands raised to show she meant no harm. "No, no, I won't hurt you. I promise. Are you hurt?" The girl hesitated. Then she lifted her knee. There was a shallow scrape, bleeding but not badly. Mara's old instincts kicked in. She tore a strip from her sleeve and pressed it gently over the wound. "What's your name?" Mara asked, keeping her voice calm. The little girl sniffled. "Ava. That's a beautiful name, Ava. I'm Mara." She smiled, though her teeth chattered from the cold. "Can you tell me what happened? Why are you out here?" Ava's lip trembled. "The bad men took me, but I ran away when they stopped for gas." Mara's stomach dropped. "Bad men? You mean they kidnapped you?" Ava nodded, eyes filling with tears. "They said my papa would pay them lots of money." Mara felt her pulse quicken. A kidnapping. This wasn't a lost child. This was something dangerous, the kind of thing that got people killed. She should walk away. Call the police and disappear before whoever took Ava came back. But Ava was looking at her like she was the only safe thing left in the world. And Mara remembered what it felt like to be that lost, when her own world had fallen apart and no one had helped her. "Okay," Mara said finally. "We're going to find your papa, Ava. Do you know his number?" Ava nodded and recited a string of digits from memory. Mara blinked, a 6-year-old who could do that. She must have been trained to. Mara sighed. "Good girl. Now I just need a phone." She glanced toward the street. There was a small church not far from here, St. Mary's Shelter. The priest there had helped her once with a meal. They had a phone. "Can you walk?" Mara asked. Ava nodded. "Yes." "Then stay close to me, okay? Hold my hand. Don't let go." Ava slipped her small, cold hand into Mara's, and they stepped out into the rain together. Mara led her quickly through the side streets, every shadow feeling heavier than usual. Twice she thought she heard footsteps behind them, but when she turned, there was only the sound of cars in the distance. They reached the church, its doors unlocked as always. Warm light spilled from inside, a golden pool in the storm. Father Miguel wasn't there, only silence and the faint smell of candle wax. Mara guided Ava into a side office and picked up the old landline phone. Her fingers trembled as she dialed the number Ava had given her. It rang once, twice, 3 times. Then someone answered. Chapter 2, The Revenant's Voice. Who is this? The voice on the line was deep, clipped, and full of quiet danger. Mara froze, her mouth dry. I found a little girl, she said finally. She said her name's Ava. Silence. Then a change, the voice lost its edge, became tight, urgent. Put her on. Mara handed the phone to Ava. It's your papa. Ava's entire face changed. She pressed the phone to her ear, tears spilling freely now. Papa. I was so scared. The bad men took me but I ran, Anne. She broke into rapid words that Mara couldn't follow. It sounded like Italian, fast and emotional. Then she nodded and looked at Mara. He wants to talk to you. Mara took the phone, heart pounding. Hello. Where are you? It wasn't a question. It was a command, calm but sharp, like a knife. A church, Mara said, glancing at the crucifix on the wall. St. Mary's, near Roosevelt Avenue. I know it, the man said. Lock the doors. Don't let anyone in until I arrive. Wait, who are you? I'm the man whose daughter you're holding, he said. And I'm 20 minutes away. Something in his tone made her skin prickle. Authority, control, and an undercurrent of rage. Keep her safe, he added. If anyone comes before me, don't open the door. The line went dead. Mara stared at the phone, her hand shaking. She didn't know who that man was, but the way he'd spoken made it clear he was powerful, dangerous, and absolutely capable of doing whatever it took to get his daughter back. Your papa's coming, Mara told Ava softly. He'll be here soon. Ava nodded sleepily, exhaustion finally catching up with her. Papa always comes, she murmured. Within minutes, she was asleep on the couch, clutching Mara's sleeve. Mara locked the doors, checked the windows, and tried to breathe. The city was silent outside, except for the rain. She should have felt relief. But instead, she felt a strange unease. Whoever Ava's father was, he wasn't an ordinary man. She caught sight of herself in the window, soaked hair, hollow eyes, a worn jacket 2 sizes too big. What would he think of her? A homeless woman, bringing his kidnapped daughter back like a stray cat? The sound of engines broke through her thoughts, not one, but several. Mara peered through the narrow slit in the blinds. 6 black SUVs had pulled up outside the church. The kind used by security details and politicians. Men stepped out, dressed in dark suits despite the weather, moving like soldiers. They surrounded the building with silent precision. Then the door of the center SUV opened. A tall man stepped out. Even from a distance, she could tell he was different from the others. His posture radiated command. He wore a dark coat, his movements calm, measured, confident. When he looked toward the church doors, the men parted to let him through. Mara's heartbeat thundered. He climbed the steps, rain soaking his shoulders, and stopped in front of the church door. 3 sharp knocks echoed through the empty hall. Mara's hand hovered over the lock. For a moment, she hesitated. But then Ava stirred, whispering, "Papa," in her sleep. Mara turned the handle. The man who stepped inside looked like he'd walked out of another world. He was younger than she expected, maybe mid-30s, but carried himself with the heavy stillness of someone who'd seen too much. His eyes were the same deep brown as Ava's, though his were colder, older. The kind of eyes that had measured life and death and stopped caring about either. "Mara Quinn?" he asked. She blinked. "How do you know my name?" "I have ways of finding answers," he said simply, scanning the room until his gaze landed on the sleeping child. The icy mask on his face cracked, just slightly. He crossed the floor in long, controlled strides and knelt beside the couch. "Ava," he said softly. "Little one." Her eyes fluttered open. When she saw him, she gasped, then launched herself into his arms. He caught her easily, holding her close, pressing his face into her wet hair. "Papa, I ran," she said. "I ran and the lady helped me." He held her tighter. "I know, sweetheart. You did so well." Then his gaze lifted straight to Mara. "You helped her." Mara nodded. She was alone in an alley. "I couldn't just walk away." He rose, holding Ava on his hip. The girl's tiny arms clung to his neck. "Do you know who I am?" he asked Mara quietly. "I don't," she said honestly. "But I'm guessing the suits outside aren't social workers." His mouth curved, not a smile exactly, but something close to it. "No. They're not." He shifted Ava gently into one arm and reached into his coat with the other. Mara tensed, but he only pulled out a black wallet and took out a thick fold of bills. He held them out to her. "For your trouble." Mara stared. "I don't want your money." "Everyone wants money," he said. "Especially people who need it." "I didn't do it for money," Mara said, her voice rising. She was scared. She needed help. Something flickered in his eyes, curiosity, maybe even respect. Slowly, he put the money away. "What do you want then?" he asked. "A home. Food. Protection. I just want to make sure she's safe," Mara said. "Then I'll go." He studied her for a long moment. The air felt heavy between them. Finally, he said, "You'll come with us." "What?" "She trusts you," he said simply, nodding toward the child now dozing again on his shoulder. "And I don't trust anyone. That makes you useful." Mara crossed her arms. "You think I'm going to get into a car with a stranger who shows up with armed guards?" He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "I'm not asking." Mara held his gaze, refusing to back down. "And I'm not scared." He looked at her like no one had ever said that to him before, not and meant it. Then, unexpectedly, he gave a short nod. "Good. You'll need that." Outside, his men opened the SUV door. Luke walked past her, his coat brushing against her arm as he went. "Come," he said over his shoulder. "You're under my protection now, whether you want it or not." Mara hesitated, glancing at the sleeping child in his arms, the girl who'd trusted her when no one else did. She took a deep breath, pulled up her hood, and followed him into the rain. The SUVs pulled away from the church and disappeared into the wet night, leaving only the echo of thunder and the faint glow of taillights fading down the road. For Mara Quinn, it felt like crossing an invisible line from the life she'd been barely surviving to one she couldn't begin to understand. And sitting beside her in the dark car, Luciano Vale, the revenant, was already studying her reflection in the window, wondering who this woman was who'd refused his money and touched his daughter's life. He didn't know it yet. But she was about to touch his fate, too. Chapter 3, The Devil Finds His Angel. The car ride was long and silent. Mara sat in the back seat beside Ava, who had fallen asleep again, her small head resting on Mara's arm. Outside, the city lights faded into the distance as they drove north, toward a part of Chicago she had only ever seen in magazines, where gates guarded every mansion and the air smelled like wealth and fear. Luciano Vale sat across from her, his face unreadable. He didn't speak for the first 20 minutes, his attention fixed on the dark window beside him. Only once did he glance at Ava, the hard edges of his expression softening for a heartbeat before returning to stone. Mara kept her gaze low. The silence pressed on her ears. Finally, she cleared her throat. "Where are we going?" Luke's deep voice broke the quiet. "Home. I don't think I belong there," she said. "I'm not part of your world." "You are now," he replied without looking at her. "You found Ava. That makes you part of it, whether you want to be or not." Mara frowned. "I just want to make sure she's safe. Then I'll go." Luke finally turned his eyes toward her. They were dark, sharp, and searching. "You think you can just walk away? There are people who know you helped her. They'll come for you. And for me, that's unacceptable. I didn't ask for your protection." "No one ever does," he said. "But once you're in my care, you stay there. Until I decide otherwise." Mara's jaw tightened. "You sound like you own everything you see." He leaned back slightly. "I do." His words weren't arrogant, they were simply true in his world. The car rolled through massive iron gates that opened automatically. What lay beyond made Mara catch her breath, an enormous estate of stone and glass, surrounded by gardens and security lights that glowed through the rain. Guards stood at the entrance, armed and watchful. This wasn't a home, it was a fortress. "Welcome to Vale Manor," Luke said quietly. The SUV stopped in front of a grand staircase. As soon as Luke stepped out, Two men in dark suits appeared from nowhere, moving with military precision. They bowed their heads slightly. "Everything's secure, boss," one said. Luke nodded and gestured toward Mara. "See that she's shown to a room next to Ava's." Mara stepped out into the rain, blinking at the size of the building. "You really live here?" Luke looked at her as if he didn't understand the question. "It's where I keep what's mine." A woman in her 50s appeared in the doorway, tall, straight-backed, dressed in grey. Her expression was cool but not cruel. "Mr. Vale," she greeted him, then turned to Mara with polite curiosity. "This must be the one who found Miss Ava." "Mrs. Rowan," Luke said, "this is Mara Quinn. She'll be staying with us as Ava's companion." Mrs. Rowan's eyes flicked over Mara's soaked clothes and tangled hair. "Of course. I'll prepare a room." Luke shifted Ava, who was still asleep in his arms. "Make sure she eats something warm in the morning," he said softly. Then, to Mara, "Follow Mrs. Rowan. Get cleaned up. We'll talk later." Mara hesitated. "Talk about what?" "About the rules," he said, walking up the stairs. "Everyone in my house follows them." She watched him disappear inside, the rain glinting on his dark hair like silver. He moved like someone used to command, a man who expected the world to bend to him. Yet when Ava stirred in his arms, he adjusted her gently, almost tenderly. That contradiction unsettled her more than anything else. Mrs. Rowan led Mara through a wide hallway lined with marble floors and silent portraits. Everything was spotless, symmetrical, cold. It felt more like a museum than a home. "Your room is here," Mrs. Rowan said, opening a door to a space larger than Mara's entire apartment before she lost it. A king-sized bed stood under a chandelier, and the air smelled faintly of roses and expensive polish. "There's a bathroom through there. Clothes will be brought shortly." Mara turned to her. "Mrs. Rowan, who exactly is Mr. Vale?" Mrs. Rowan hesitated, then said carefully, "He's a man people don't cross twice." "That's not an answer." "It's the only one I'll give," the woman replied, then added in a gentler tone, "Take a bath, Miss Quinn. You look like you haven't rested in months." When Mrs. Rowan left, Mara locked the door and leaned against it. Her reflection in the mirror looked like a stranger, hollow eyes, skin pale from cold and hunger, but something new flickered behind her exhaustion: purpose. For the first time in a long time, she mattered again, even if she didn't understand how. She took a hot bath until the water turned grey, then changed into the soft clothes left on the bed. They fit perfectly. Someone had guessed her size. Or maybe Luke just knew. As she lay in bed that night, listening to the storm outside, she tried to convince herself she was safe. But she couldn't shake the feeling that she'd walked straight into the lion's den. And the lion had noticed her. Chapter 4, The House of Wolves. Mara woke up to the smell of coffee and the sound of footsteps in the hallway. For a moment she didn't remember where she was: the silk sheets, the quiet hum of distant voices, the golden light streaming through the tall windows. Then it all came rushing back. A knock came at the door. Before she could answer, Mrs. Rowan entered, holding a tray. "Good morning, Miss Quinn. Mr. Vale requests your presence in the dining room." "Requests?" Mara asked. "Or orders?" Mrs. Rowan allowed herself a small smile. "In this house, there isn't much difference." Mara followed her through the maze of hallways until they entered a long dining room with a table that could seat 20. Luke sat at one end, dressed in a black suit, reading a file while sipping his coffee. The morning light cut across his face, highlighting the sharp line of his jaw. He looked powerful and distant, like a portrait that had come to life. Ava sat beside him, eating pancakes with a smile that lit up her entire face. When she saw Mara, she waved excitedly. "Mara, you came." Luke looked up, and for a second, something human softened his expression. "She thought you'd left," he said. "I wouldn't do that," Mara replied, taking a seat beside Ava. "I promised her I'd stay until she was safe." Luke folded the file shut. "Then we should discuss what safe means in my world." Mara frowned. "Meaning?" He leaned back, studying her. "Meaning you don't step outside this property without my permission. You don't speak to anyone I haven't approved. You answer when my men ask, and you never," his gaze sharpened. "Never lie to me." Mara raised her eyebrows. Sounds less like protection and more like imprisonment. Luke set down his cup. It's survival. You'd be dead within a day out there. I've been surviving on my own for months. He met her eyes. No. You've been existing. There's a difference. Mara wanted to argue, but Ava interrupted by tugging at her sleeve. Mara, Mr. Jonas says we can feed the fish later. Will you come? Of course, Mara said, forcing a smile. Luke nodded to one of his guards near the door, a tall man with a scar along his cheek. Jonas will take you both to the gardens after breakfast. Stay where the cameras can see you. Cameras. Guards. Rules. The realization hit Mara hard. This little girl lived inside a golden cage. Ava chattered through breakfast, telling stories about her toys and favorite books. Luke listened quietly, his eyes soft whenever he looked at her. For a moment, he seemed almost normal, a father, not a crime lord. But when the phone on the table buzzed, that illusion shattered. He answered with a single word, Vale. His voice turned cold, precise. If they're back in the city, I want names by noon. A pause. No, leave the bodies where they'll be found. Fear does half the work for us. Mara froze, her fork halfway to her mouth. He caught her expression and ended the call. Don't look at me like that, he said quietly. You live in a city built on corruption. I just stopped pretending it's clean. I didn't ask for this, she said. Neither did I, he replied, then turned to Ava, his tone instantly soft again. Go with Jonas, sweetheart. I'll see you before lunch. When Ava skipped out, Mara stood. You kill people. Luke's eyes met hers. I protect what's mine. Sometimes that requires blood. Do you even hear yourself? He walked toward her slowly, each step deliberate. Do you hear yourself? You think the world runs on mercy? You're alive because I understand violence better than the men who took my daughter. Mara's voice trembled, not from fear but anger. That doesn't make it right. He stopped close enough that she could see the faint scar cutting through his left eyebrow. Right doesn't keep children safe, Miss Quinn. Power does. For a long moment, they stood there in silence, locked in a battle neither could win. Finally, Luke exhaled and stepped back. You should eat, he said. And rest. There's a meeting tonight. You'll see things you might not understand. Stay in your room. Mara crossed her arms. Or what? He looked at her, that hint of amusement returning to his eyes. You'll find I'm not good at repeating myself. He left the room with the calm stride of a man who knew everyone obeyed him eventually. But Mara wasn't everyone. She looked down the long, empty table and whispered, I don't take orders from devils. That evening, as darkness settled over the estate, Mara stood by her window, looking out at the rain-drenched gardens. Guards moved like shadows along the walls. Somewhere below, voices murmured, low, serious, dangerous. She caught a glimpse of Luke in the courtyard, speaking to his men. Even from up here, he looked untouchable, the master of his empire. But when he turned slightly, she saw the truth the others couldn't, the weight in his shoulders, the exhaustion in his stance. A man holding up too much, for too long. Ava appeared at her door not long after. Can I sleep here? She asked softly. I don't like when Papa has meetings. The house feels scary. Mara knelt and hugged her. Of course, sweetheart. As Ava drifted to sleep beside her, Mara stared at the ceiling, listening to the muffled hum of engines and men outside. She was living in the center of a storm, one that could swallow her whole. And yet, when she thought of Luke's face when he held his daughter, she couldn't see a monster. Just a man who'd forgotten what peace felt like. Chapter 5, Rules of Survival. The next morning, the sound of footsteps woke Mara. The door opened quietly and Mrs. Rowan stepped inside, holding a stack of folded clothes, soft cotton, neatly pressed, nothing like the rags Mara had worn before. Mr. Vale asked that you join him in the study after breakfast, she said. He wishes to discuss the terms of your stay. The terms of my what? Mara muttered, rubbing her eyes. Mrs. Rowan didn't answer. She simply placed the clothes on the bed and said, he expects punctuality, before leaving. Mara sighed. Of course he does. The man probably expected the sun itself to rise on his command. After dressing in the simple grey blouse and dark jeans she'd been given, she walked through the long, silent hallways. The house was enormous, all glass, marble, and quiet power. Guards stood at corners pretending not to stare, but their hands rested near their weapons. The sense of control here was suffocating. When she reached the study, the door was already open. Luke sat behind a large oak desk, a cup of coffee beside him and papers spread out in neat stacks. His eyes lifted when she entered. "You're on time," he said. "That's a good start." Mara crossed her arms. "You didn't exactly give me much of a choice." "Most people don't argue with me their first morning here," Luke said, setting his pen down. "But you're not most people." She frowned. "Is that supposed to be a compliment?" He ignored the question. "Sit." She hesitated, then took the chair across from him. Luke leaned back, studying her like she was a puzzle he was still trying to solve. "I have 3 rules," he said. "Follow them, and you'll live comfortably. Break them, and things become complicated." "Let me guess," Mara said. "You don't like complicated." He smiled faintly. "No, I don't." He held up a finger. "Rule 1, you don't leave this property without permission or an escort." "That sounds like a prison." "Call it protection," he replied calmly. "The men who took Ava still have allies. If they learn she trusts you, you become a target." "Rule 2, he continued, you don't lie to me. Not about anything. Not even the small things." Mara raised an eyebrow. "That's a lot of trust to demand from someone you just met." "I don't demand trust," Luke said, his voice low. "I demand truth." He leaned forward slightly, his eyes catching the light. "And rule 3, never go near the West Wing." "Why?" she asked. "Because I said so." "That's not an answer." "It's the only one you'll get." Their eyes locked. Mara could feel the quiet weight behind his words, not anger, but warning. Something in that part of the house was off limits for a reason. Finally, she said, "Fine. Anything else?" Luke studied her a moment longer, then said, "Yes. One more thing." He stood and walked around the desk until he was standing close enough for her to catch the faint scent of his cologne, clean, sharp, dangerous. "You saved my daughter," he said quietly. "That makes you valuable to me. But understand this, in my world, value is both protection and danger. You stay close to Ava. You keep her safe. And you stay alive." Mara met his gaze. "And if I don't?" His expression didn't change. "Then I'll bury whoever touches you. And if it's your fault," he paused, his voice dropping lower. "I'll bury you, too." He said it so calmly that the words felt like truth carved in stone. Mara swallowed, her pulse quickening. She could see now what made him so feared. It wasn't just the violence. It was his absolute certainty, the way he believed everything he said would come to pass. After a long silence, Luke gestured toward the door. "Ava's waiting for you in the garden. She has a lesson this morning. Stay with her." Mara stood, her hands trembling slightly. "I don't work for you." "No," Luke said. "You protect for me. There's a difference." She didn't argue. She didn't trust her voice to stay steady. Outside, the morning sun had burned through the fog. Ava was sitting on the edge of a fountain, feeding crumbs to the koi that darted in the water. She looked up when she saw Mara and smiled, the kind of smile that made the dark edges of the world fade for a moment. "Mara," she said happily. "Papa said you can stay as long as you want." Mara sat beside her, forcing a smile. "Did he now?" Ava nodded. "He said you're brave." Mara looked at the child's innocent face and thought, "No, little one. I'm not brave. Just trapped like you." Still, she reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind Ava's ear. "Then I guess we're both staying, huh?" Ava giggled and went back to feeding the fish. From the balcony above, Luke watched them, hands in his pockets, expression unreadable. There was something almost haunted in the way he looked at them, like he couldn't decide if he'd made the right choice letting this stranger into his house. Because he didn't know yet, Mara Quinn wasn't the type to stay quiet in anyone's cage. Chapter 6, Voices Beneath the Floor. The first few days inside Vale Manor were almost unreal. The rooms gleamed like mirrors, meals arrived at set times, and everyone spoke in low, respectful tones. It was peaceful, in a way that made Mara uneasy. Peace didn't last in places like this. Ava grew attached to her quickly. She followed Mara everywhere, through the gardens, the library, even the kitchen. Every night, Mara read her stories until she fell asleep. Every morning, Ava's laughter filled the halls again. Slowly, the child began to lose the fear in her eyes. But the house itself was never truly quiet. Guards patrolled constantly, doors locked automatically, and there was always one place no one mentioned, the West Wing. One evening, after putting Ava to bed, Mara wandered the halls, restless. The air felt heavy, charged with something she couldn't name. As she passed the long corridor near the West Wing, she heard it, a low sound, muffled, almost like crying. She froze. Then came another sound, a voice, deep and angry, echoing faintly through the floorboards. It was impossible to tell what was being said, but the tone was unmistakable. Rage. Interrogation. Fear. Her pulse quickened. Against her better judgment, she followed the sound, her bare feet silent on the marble. At the end of the hallway was a locked door. The noise came from somewhere beneath it. The basement. Mara pressed her ear to the cold wood. There was a sharp thud, like something, or someone, hitting a wall, followed by a groan of pain. She stumbled back, heart racing. He's torturing someone down there. The realization hit hard, but it shouldn't have surprised her. She'd seen the way Luke's men looked at him, the way no one questioned his orders. Still, hearing the proof of what he really was, made her stomach twist. She turned and hurried back toward her room. That night, sleep wouldn't come. The sounds from below echoed in her mind. When she finally did drift off, it was to the image of Ava's bright eyes, innocent and trusting, in a house built on violence. The next morning, when Mara entered the dining room, Luke was already there, dressed in black, his sleeves rolled up. There were faint red stains near his cuffs, maybe wine. Maybe not. He looked up as she entered. "You're pale," he said. "Did you sleep?" "Not much," Mara said carefully. "Why?" She hesitated. "Because this house doesn't rest at night." Something flickered in his expression, gone almost instantly. "You heard." Mara's hands tightened on the chair. "Yes." Luke set down his coffee. "And now you think I'm a monster?" She didn't answer. "Say it," he said quietly. "It's what you're thinking." Her eyes lifted to his. "I think you kill people to feel in control." He studied her for a long time, then said, "I kill people to protect my daughter. There's always another way." "No," he said flatly. "There isn't." The silence between them stretched like wire. Finally, Mara asked, "Did it make you feel better?" Luke's eyes darkened. "No," he said softly. "It made me feel nothing." "That's worse." He stood and walked toward her until they were only a few feet apart. "You live in a world that rewards mercy. Mine punishes it. If I were merciful, Ava would be dead." Mara's throat tightened. "Then maybe you're the one who needs saving." Luke's jaw flexed. "I don't need saving, Miss Quinn. I need loyalty." She met his gaze without fear. "You'll have it, for Ava's sake. Not yours." Luke looked at her for a long moment before turning away. "Fair enough." He started toward the door, but paused. Without looking back, he said, "If you ever go near the West Wing again, I won't forgive it." "I didn't." "You did," he interrupted. "And my guards reported it." Mara froze. "You were testing me." He finally looked over his shoulder. "No. I was reminding you that I see everything in my house." Then he was gone. Later that day, Mara found Ava sitting in the garden, coloring a picture of a house surrounded by flowers. "That's beautiful," Mara said, sitting beside her. Ava beamed. "It's our house. You and me and Papa." Mara smiled softly. "You think your Papa belongs in a house with flowers?" Ava nodded. "He says the world is bad, but I think he just forgets to look at the good parts." Mara felt her heart ache. "You're a wise little girl." Ava giggled. "That's what Papa says too." As the sun dipped below the horizon, Mara watched the child play and thought about the man downstairs who carried the weight of too many sins. Maybe Ava was right, maybe Luke had just forgotten what goodness looked like. But when night came again and the house fell silent, the muffled sounds returned, distant, cold, final. Mara sat in the dark, clutching her blanket and whispering to herself, "You're in the house of wolves now." Chapter 7, A Gun for an Angel. Morning light crept through the curtains, laying soft gold over the marble floor. Mara sat on the edge of the bed, rubbing her temples. Another sleepless night. The house still whispered voices in the halls, quiet footsteps, the faint hum of tension that never truly went away. A knock came. She looked up to see Luke standing at the doorway, dressed in dark casual clothes, black shirt, sleeves rolled up, no tie. He looked different today, less polished, more human. "Get dressed," he said. "We're going outside." Mara frowned. "Where exactly?" "The training grounds." She raised an eyebrow. "Training for what? Tea pouring? Table manners?" Luke gave a faint smirk. "Self-defense. I don't need." "You do," he said, his tone final. "You're under my roof now. If anyone ever gets past my men again, you'll need to protect yourself." And her. Her resistance wavered. He was right. Whatever she'd heard in the basement, however she felt about his world, danger was real and closer than she wanted to believe. "Fine," she said. "But if you think I'm joining your little army—" "Relax," he interrupted. "It's just you and me." The training grounds were behind the mansion, a wide stretch of open yard surrounded by trees and tall walls. A shooting range stood at one end, targets lined up like ghosts in the morning mist. Luke handed her a small handgun. Glock 19. Lightweight. Reliable. Easy for beginners. Mara hesitated before taking it. "I used to hold scalpels, not weapons. Both can kill," he said. She glared at him. "That's not what I did." He stepped closer, voice calm. "And now you'll do what you must." He moved behind her, his breath brushing her hair as he guided her stance. Feet apart. Shoulders steady. He adjusted her arms, his hands firm but not rough. Safety off. Aim with both eyes open. Her heartbeat quickened, not from fear this time, but from how close he was. The smell of his cologne mixed with the sharp scent of gunpowder. His voice was low, controlled, every word an order she couldn't help but follow. "Now squeeze," he murmured. She fired. The shot cracked through the air, echoing across the walls. The bullet hit the outer ring of the target. Not perfect, but not bad. Luke's mouth twitched slightly. "Good. Beginner's luck," she said, lowering the gun. He shook his head. "No. You've got steady hands. Surgeon's hands." She looked at him sharply. "You knew." "I read your file," he said simply. "Mara Quinn. Former trauma nurse. Fired after reporting her superior for malpractice. Disappeared 2 years ago. Your file system must have missed the part where I didn't ask for you to dig into my life. Information keeps people alive," he replied. "Especially here." She raised the gun again, firing a second shot. This one hit closer to the center. Luke smiled faintly, the kind of smile that held no warmth, just quiet satisfaction. "Again," he said. They continued for another hour. Each shot steadied her breathing. The fear she'd carried for months of being powerless, of being hunted, began to fade with every bullet. When she finally hit the bullseye, Luke stepped forward and took the gun from her hand. "Not bad," he said softly. "You learn fast." "Because you're a good teacher," she said, surprising herself. "Strict, but effective." He looked at her for a long moment, then handed her a water bottle. "That's one word for me." She studied his face, wondering what the others would call him, the men in the streets, the ones who feared his name. To Ava, he was Papa. To the city, he was the Revenant. To Mara, he was still a mystery she couldn't solve. "Why teach me this?" she asked. "You have guards. Cameras. Power." Luke's gaze darkened. "Because power isn't protection. It just paints a bigger target." He turned toward the mansion, his voice lower now. "You saved Ava once. If anything happens again, I need to know you won't freeze." Mara felt something twist inside her. You think someone will try again? I know they will, he said quietly. And next time, they'll come for both of you. Later that day, as the sun sank low, Mara found Ava in the garden, building a tiny house from sticks and leaves. She ran up to Mara, eyes bright. Papa says you're learning how to be strong, Ava said proudly. Mara smiled softly. Something like that. He said you're his angel, the girl added, then giggled. I told him you already are. Mara froze. He called me that. Ava nodded happily. He said angels don't ask for money, they just appear when you need them most. Mara didn't know what to say. For a man who carried darkness like armor, Luke's words carried strange light. That night, she couldn't sleep. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw him standing behind her, calm and steady, teaching her how to aim. Every time she heard his voice in her head, now squeeze, she felt something she couldn't name. Fear, admiration, or maybe both. She lay awake until dawn, realizing that the walls keeping her safe were also beginning to trap her heart. Chapter 8, The Confession. Days passed, blurring into a rhythm. Mornings with Ava, afternoons training with Luke, nights spent listening to the quiet hum of a mansion that never truly slept. Mara learned that Luke worked mostly at night. His office light stayed on until the early hours. Sometimes she'd catch glimpses of him through the window, standing alone, phone pressed to his ear, eyes cold. Other times, she'd find him reading to Ava, his tone gentle, his hand smoothing her hair until she fell asleep. He was two men in one body, the ruthless leader and the careful father. Mara didn't know which was real. Maybe both were. One evening, she found him in the library, sitting by the fire, a glass of whiskey in his hand. The shadows from the flames danced across his face, softening his hard edges. He didn't look up when she entered. Can't sleep again? She hesitated by the door. Do you ever? He gave a short laugh. Not for years. Mara walked closer, drawn by curiosity and something else, a pull she couldn't explain. You don't seem like the type who lets things keep him up. Guilt doesn't sleep, he said quietly. The words surprised her. What are you guilty of? Luke stared into the fire. Everything. She waited, but he didn't elaborate. So she sat in the chair across from him, pulling her knees close. You said once. That mercy doesn't work in your world. It doesn't. Then what about regret? His eyes flicked to hers. Regret is for people who can change the past. I can't. You sound like you've stopped believing you can change at all. Luke tilted his head slightly. And you? Do you still believe people can change? Mara looked into the fire. I have to. If I didn't, I'd still be living on the street, thinking the worst thing that happened to me was the only thing that defined me. Luke set his glass down and leaned forward, elbows on his knees. What happened to you, really? She hesitated. It wasn't a story she liked to tell. But the way he asked, calm, not demanding, made her lower her guard. I worked in the trauma unit at St. Augustine's, she began slowly. I found out one of the senior surgeons was falsifying drug records. Selling controlled meds under the table. When I reported it, the hospital buried it. Then they buried me. Luke's jaw tightened. They ruined you. They called me unstable. Said I made it up. My license was suspended pending investigation. I lost my job, my apartment. Everything. Did you ever find proof? Mara shook her head. I didn't get the chance. Luke leaned back, his expression unreadable. The man's name? She hesitated. Dr. Victor Lang. Luke's gaze sharpened, his fingers tightening slightly on the armrest. Lang, he repeated, voice like a blade. I've heard that name. She frowned. From where? Doesn't matter, he said, standing abruptly. But if he's tied to what happened to me, to Ava's kidnapping, then he'll regret breathing. Mara stood too. Luke. He turned to her, and for a moment, the rage in his eyes softened. You shouldn't have had to live like that, Mara. You did the right thing. The world just punished you for it. His voice carried quiet anger, not at her, but for her. It made something deep inside her ache. Why are you telling me this? She asked softly. He looked at her for a long time before answering. Because you remind me of what I used to be before this world made me cold. The confession hung between them, fragile and real. Mara stepped closer, lowering her voice. You're not as cold as you pretend. Luke gave a small, humorless laugh. Then I'm not pretending hard enough. You love your daughter, she said. You protect her. That's not cold. He looked down, his expression unreadable. I protect what's left of my soul. She's all that's left. And what about the rest? She asked. The part you hide from her? Luke's eyes met hers. Maybe it died with her mother. Silence fell. The fire cracked softly between them. Mara didn't know what to say, so she did the only thing she could. She reached out and placed a hand lightly on his arm. He didn't move away. For a long moment, neither spoke. The only sound was the rain starting again outside, steady and calm. Finally, Luke said quietly, You should go to bed, Mara. She nodded, but her hand lingered for a second longer before she stepped back. Good night, Luke. He watched her leave, his gaze lingering on the doorway long after she was gone. When he finally turned back to the fire, he whispered to himself, Maybe angels don't just save children. Chapter 9, Fire in Her Hands. Rain hammered against the windows, turning the garden outside into a blur of silver. Inside, the manor was quiet, too quiet. Mara sat in Ava's room, helping her arrange stuffed animals along the bed. The child's laughter filled the space, a soft, innocent sound that didn't belong in a house built on fear. Papa said we can make pancakes tomorrow, Ava said, proudly setting a toy rabbit in line. Mara smiled. Then we'll need to wake up early. Ava giggled, climbing under her blanket. Will you read the one about the stars again? Mara opened the book, her voice low and steady. But halfway through the story, she froze. A faint click echoed down the hallway. The kind of sound you only heard when someone opened a door they weren't supposed to. She closed the book. Stay here, Ava. The little girl blinked, confused. Mara. Lock the door, sweetheart. Don't open it until you hear my voice. Promise. Ava nodded, frightened now. Mara kissed her forehead, slipped quietly into the hall, and pulled the door shut behind her. The corridor was dark, lit only by the glow of the security lights. Mara's heartbeat thudded in her ears as she moved toward the sound. Every instinct told her to call for help, but the phones were in the study downstairs. There wasn't time. Then she saw it, a shadow at the far end of the hall, tall and careful, moving with the kind of purpose that didn't belong to a servant. The man wore black from head to toe, a silenced pistol in his hand. Her stomach turned to ice. She ducked behind a column, heart hammering. The guard was making for Ava's room. Think, Mara. Think. Her eyes fell on the small table near the wall. A heavy metal candle holder sat on it. She grabbed it, waited until the intruder drew closer, then stepped out. Hey. The man spun, weapon rising. Mara swung the candle holder with everything she had. It crashed into his arm, sending the gun skidding across the floor. He lunged for her, slamming her back against the wall. She gasped, clawing at his mask, catching a glimpse of cold blue eyes before he grabbed her wrist. Then a sound split the air, a gunshot. For a heartbeat she thought she'd been hit. But the man crumpled instead, a small, shocked exhale leaving his chest. Mara looked down. The pistol in her shaking hands smoked faintly. She didn't remember picking it up. Her vision blurred as the intruder fell, eyes open, blood spreading across the polished floor. Footsteps thundered from down the hall. Luke appeared, weapon drawn, his face carved from stone. Two of his guards followed, sweeping the hallway. He took in the scene in one glance. Mara standing barefoot, the gun trembling in her hands, the body at her feet. What happened? He demanded. She couldn't speak. The words stuck in her throat. Finally, she whispered, he was going for Ava. Luke moved forward and gently pried the gun from her fingers. His voice softened, almost unrecognizable. Did he hurt you? She shook her head, tears welling. No. I shot him. Luke glanced at the corpse, then back at her. You did exactly what you had to. I killed him, she said, as if hearing it out loud might change the truth. Luke's gaze didn't waver. You saved a life. Don't confuse the two. The guards waited for orders. Luke's voice returned to steel. Get him out. Burn everything he touched. As they dragged the body away, Luke took Mara's hand, steady, firm, and led her to his study. He poured a drink, handed it to her, then crouched in front of her chair. Look at me, he said. She did. You did good, Mara. Her voice cracked. It doesn't feel good. It never does, he murmured. But now you understand what this world really is. She closed her eyes. I never wanted to. He straightened slowly. You wanted to protect her. That's what matters. He turned away, facing the window, rain streaking down the glass like silver threads. I've taken hundreds of lives. Some deserved it. Some didn't. Every one left a mark. You think I sleep well at night? I don't. Mara set the glass down. Then why keep doing it? He looked back at her, eyes tired but fierce. Because if I stop, the monsters win. And now you've seen what they're capable of. She stared at the gun on his desk, the same kind he trained her to use. You knew this could happen. I told you it would, he said quietly. But I didn't think it would happen so soon. She met his eyes. Who sent him? Luke hesitated. The Vitoli family. They're old enemies. The same people who ordered Ava's first kidnapping. Mara swallowed hard. Then they're not finished. No, he said. But neither am I. He walked toward the door, then paused. Get some rest. I'll handle the cleanup. Luke. He looked back, and for once the hard mask slipped. You did what I would have done. She didn't answer. When he left, the silence he left behind was heavier than the gunshot that had shattered it. Mara sat there until dawn, the memory of the man's blue eyes haunting her. She had taken a life. To save another. And somewhere deep down, she knew she'd crossed a line she could never uncross. Chapter 10. The storm between them. The next morning, sunlight poured into the manor as if the night before hadn't happened. The halls were clean. The blood was gone. The body, erased from existence. Only the smell of bleach lingered faintly in the air. Ava ran to Mara, throwing her arms around her legs. Papa said you're the bravest person he knows. Mara managed a weak smile. Did he? He said you're family now, Ava said proudly. That means you can't ever leave. The words should have comforted her. Instead, they felt like chains. When Ava ran off to play, Mara went looking for Luke. She found him on the balcony overlooking the city. He stood with his hands on the railing, watching the skyline through a haze of cigarette smoke. You shouldn't smoke, she said quietly. He didn't turn. Old habit. You said that last night about killing. He smiled faintly. That one's harder to quit. Mara stepped closer. You could try. Maybe. He flicked the cigarette over the railing, watching the ember fall. But then who would protect her? Who would protect you? I can protect myself now, she said softly. He turned then, eyes meeting hers. I saw the look on your face after you pulled the trigger. You still think you can do this alone? I didn't ask for your world, Luke. No one does, he said. It finds you. Silence stretched between them, heavy and fragile. Finally, he said, you saved my daughter twice. That means something to me. It means I was in the wrong place at the right time. He shook his head. It means you're the only person I trust. Mara felt a flicker of warmth and fear all at once. You shouldn't. Probably not, he admitted, taking a slow breath. But I do. He moved closer until he was only a step away. You keep looking at me like you're searching for the man under all this. Maybe I am, she said. And what if you find nothing but the devil? Mara's voice barely rose above a whisper. Then maybe the devil deserves someone to see him. He froze, something unreadable flickering across his face. Careful, Mara. You don't know what you're inviting. Maybe I do, she said quietly. They stood like that for a long time, the city's hum below them, the wind tugging at her hair. The distance between them felt electric. Then Luke stepped back, the moment breaking. Come with me, he said. He led her to the private chapel built behind the manor, a small, beautiful room lined with candles and old glass windows. The air smelled faintly of incense. Mara stared at him, surprised. "You pray?" she asked. He shrugged. "Sometimes I pretend to. It helps me remember what I lost." He lit a candle and placed it before the altar. "My wife used to come here. She said even monsters needed light." Mara's heart ached. What was she like? Luke's expression softened. "Kind. Brave. She didn't care about what I was. She just wanted me to be better." He gave a bitter smile. "And I wasn't. She'd be proud you're trying." He looked at her. "Am I?" "You're still fighting," Mara said. "That counts for something." He turned toward her, voice low. "You talk about me like I'm worth saving. Maybe you are." Luke studied her for a long moment. Then, almost against his will, he reached up and brushed a strand of hair from her face. His hand lingered there, fingers warm against her skin. Mara didn't move. Her breath caught in her throat. "Tell me to stop," he whispered. But she didn't. Their foreheads touched, a quiet, trembling closeness more powerful than any words. For a second, the world outside, the danger, the fear, the blood faded away. Then Luke stepped back, breaking the moment. His voice was rough. "You should go. Before I forget why I shouldn't cross that line." Mara nodded, heart pounding. "You think there's a line left between us?" He gave a half smile that didn't reach his eyes. "If there isn't, we're both already lost." She left him there in the candlelight, staring at the flame his wife once lit. That night, the rain returned. Thunder rolled over the city. Luke stood alone on the balcony, a glass of whiskey untouched beside him. Down the hall, Mara sat awake, staring at the same storm. Two souls caught between sin and salvation, each wondering if the other might be the way out or the final fall. Chapter 11, The Chainbreaker. The following week, the mansion felt heavier than usual. Guards doubled at every door. Ava was no longer allowed outside the garden walls. Even Mrs. Rowan moved with quiet unease, as though the walls themselves were listening. Mara noticed Luke sleeping less and disappearing more. He returned at dawn smelling of gunpowder and rain, always silent, always distant. Whatever war he was fighting out there, it was getting closer. One afternoon, as Mara and Ava were painting in the sunroom, Jonas entered. The scar on his cheek seemed deeper in the light. "Mr. Vale needs you in the study," he told Mara. Ava looked up. "Do you have to go?" Mara smiled softly. "Just for a little while, sweetheart. Keep painting. I'll be right back." When Mara entered the study, Luke was already there, leaning over a map scattered with red-marked points. His voice was low, sharp. "They've hit 2 of my supply lines this week. I want the heads responsible." Jonas nodded and left the room, closing the door behind him. Only then did Luke look up. "You wanted to see me?" Mara asked. He gestured for her to sit. "I need you to hear something." He pressed a button on the desk, and the speakers crackled to life. Static, then voices, men talking fast, nervous. "Delivery confirmed. Dr. Lang said he'll get the girl this time." Luke killed the sound. His expression was ice. "Dr. Victor Lang. The same man who destroyed your life." Mara's stomach twisted. "He's working with them. He's bankrolled the Vitoli family's operations for years," Luke said. "They wanted leverage against me. He wanted to hurt you. Convenient partnership." Mara felt anger rise through her fear. "Then this started because of him. Because I exposed him." Luke nodded. "He was the one who orchestrated Ava's first kidnapping. He wanted to weaken me. But he didn't count on you." Mara sat back, shaking her head. "He's a doctor. He's supposed to save people." Luke's tone was quiet but cold. "There's more blood on a pen than a gun in this world." She stared at him. "So what do we do?" "I find him," Luke said. "And I make sure he never touches either of you again." Mara hesitated. "Let me help." He looked at her, surprised. "You've helped enough." "He ruined my life," she said. "I deserve to face him." Luke walked around the desk, stopping close enough that she could see the tension in his jaw. "If you see him again, it won't bring you peace, Mara. It'll just open wounds you've barely closed." I can handle that, she whispered. He searched her face for a long moment. Then, quietly, he said, you remind me of myself before I stopped believing justice existed. And now I settle for vengeance. The words hung between them, heavy and dangerous. Before Mara could answer, the intercom buzzed. Jonas's voice cut through the static. Boss, we've got movement on the east side. 2 vans approaching. Luke's expression hardened. Get Ava. Take her to the safe room. Go. Mara ran. Her feet barely touched the marble as she sprinted down the hall. In the sunroom, Ava was still painting, unaware. Sweetheart, Mara said, trying to sound calm, we're going to play a game. It's called hide and stay quiet. Ava's eyes widened. Is it the bad men again? Mara swallowed. Just stay with me. They hurried through a concealed door behind the bookshelf, down a narrow staircase, and into a steel-lined room lit by dim lamps. The door sealed behind them with a heavy click. Ava pressed close, trembling. Where's Papa? She asked. He's coming, Mara said softly. He always comes. They waited. The muffled sound of shouting echoed above, then gunfire. Ava clutched Mara's arm, sobbing quietly. Mara held her tighter, whispering, it's okay. We're safe. He'll stop them. But inside, she wasn't sure. She could hear the war breaking out over their heads. And she knew Luke was out there alone. Minutes passed. Then silence. Finally, the door swung open. Luke stood there, face streaked with sweat and ash, shirt torn, gun still in his hand. But his eyes softened when he saw Ava. It's over, he said quietly. Ava ran to him, crying. He held her close, eyes closing briefly, before looking up at Mara. He wasn't among them. Lang wasn't here. Mara stepped forward. Then where? Before she could finish, Jonas appeared behind Luke, his expression grim. Boss, we found this. He handed Luke a small phone. A video was playing on the screen, grainy footage of Ava sleeping in her bed. A distorted voice spoke over it. If you want her safe, you'll bring the woman who saved her. Dr. Lang would like his property back. Luke's jaw tightened until it trembled. Mara's breath caught. They're coming for me, she said. Luke's voice was low, deadly calm. They won't touch you. I'll see to it. She shook her head. Luke, listen. He wants me. Not Ava. If he gets me, he'll stop. No, Luke said firmly. You're under my protection. You can't fight this forever, Mara said. He's not like the others. He hides behind laws, hospitals, police. You can't kill a ghost. Luke stepped closer, his tone darkening. Then I'll drag the ghost into the light. That night, Mara sat by Ava's bedside, watching her sleep. The little girl's face was peaceful again, unaware of the storm that surrounded her. Mara whispered, I'll fix this. I promise. In the next room, Luke stood by the window, the phone still in his hand. Jonas waited beside him. She's going to do something reckless, Jonas said. I know, Luke replied. That's why we'll let her think she's doing it alone. He glanced toward the closed door. If Lang wants her, he'll get her, but on my terms. Chapter 12, The Revenant's War. It happened 2 nights later. Mara woke before dawn and dressed quietly. She left a note on Ava's pillow, stay with your father. Don't worry about me. I have to end this. She slipped through the kitchen door and out into the cold fog. One of Luke's cars was parked at the edge of the estate. The keys were still inside. She drove into the city, her heart pounding. By the time Luke discovered the note, the sun had barely risen. He read it once, jaw clenched, then crumpled it in his fist. Track her, he told Jonas. Within an hour, Luke's convoy of black SUVs roared through the streets, engines growling like thunder. Chicago's underworld had learned to hide when Vale was angry, but this morning there was nowhere to hide. Meanwhile, Mara arrived at the old hospital where it had all started, St. Augustine's. It had been shut down months ago, its windows boarded, walls covered in graffiti. But the front doors were unlocked. Someone was waiting. Dr. Victor Lang stepped out of the shadows. Time had made him softer around the middle, but his eyes were the same, cold, calculating. Mara Quinn, he said, smiling thinly. Still pretending to be a hero. You ruined me, she said quietly. And now you're coming after a child. She's leverage, Lang said. Nothing personal. But you, he tilted his head. You're something else. You had to know this would happen. You don't expose men like me and walk away untouched. Mara clenched her fists. You used people like tools. You stole medicine meant for the sick. Lang shrugged. I call it business. He took a step closer. Luciano Vale thinks he can protect you. But he's just another thug. He'll die like one. Mara's voice shook. You don't know him. Lang's smile widened. Oh, I do. I paid men to kidnap his daughter. I studied him. I wanted to see how far a father would go when his heart was torn out. A sound cut through the room, boots on the floor above, doors slamming, the whine of engines outside. Lang's smile faltered. Ah. The Revenant arrives. Luke appeared in the doorway, gun drawn, black coat swirling around him. His face was carved from fury. Step away from her. Lang raised his hands slightly. Mr. Vale. Always so dramatic. Luke's voice was deadly quiet. You took my wife. You hurt my daughter. And now you think you'll walk out of here alive? Lang laughed softly. If you kill me, the evidence I've hidden goes public. Every bank account, every crime, your entire empire burns. Then we burn together, Luke said. Mara moved between them. Luke, stop. Killing him won't fix anything. Luke's eyes were wild. He took everything. Then take back your life, she said firmly. Not his. Lang's smirk returned. Touching. But it's over. He reached into his coat and the shot rang out before he could pull the trigger. Luke lowered his gun slowly. Lang staggered, blood blooming on his chest, shock etched on his face. He collapsed without another word. Mara stared, horrified. Luke. He dropped the gun. He would have killed you. She shook her head, tears in her eyes. He already did. Just not the way you think. Luke stepped closer, his expression breaking. You don't understand. I can't lose you too. For a long moment, there was only silence. Then sirens wailed in the distance. Jonas appeared in the doorway. Boss, we have to go. Luke looked at Mara. Come with me. She hesitated, glancing at Lang's body. And what happens now? Luke's voice was steady, almost gentle. Now I end what he started. They drove back to the estate in silence. The city outside seemed smaller, washed out by the rising dawn. Luke stared ahead, one hand on the wheel, the other resting near hers but never touching. When they reached the gates, he finally spoke. You were right, you know. About what? That there's another way, he said. Maybe I've just forgotten how to find it. Mara turned to him, her voice soft. Then let me help you remember. For the first time in years, Luciano Vale allowed himself to hope that redemption might still exist even for a man like him. But outside the walls, smoke was still rising. The Vitoli family was regrouping, the city readying for war. And somewhere in that coming storm, the Revenant would rise again. Chapter 13, The Price of Salvation. 3 nights passed after Dr. Lang's death, but the air inside the Vale mansion hadn't eased. It was thicker now, full of unspoken things. The city was on edge, and the men in Luke's world whispered that war was coming. Mara could feel it too. Every time Luke's phone rang, his jaw tightened. Every time Ava laughed, he flinched like he feared it might be the last time he'd hear it. That evening, the sun dipped behind the skyline, turning the windows into mirrors of fire. Mara found Luke in the study, surrounded by maps and folders. He didn't look up when she entered. You've been up all night again, she said softly. I can't afford not to be, he replied. You're preparing for something. He finally met her eyes. They'll come for revenge. The Vitolis lost too much. They won't stop until they take what's mine. Mara crossed the room, placing a hand over one of the maps. You mean Ava? I mean everything, he said. My empire. My life. Ha. He hesitated, his gaze softening. And you? Mara's chest tightened. Then we leave. Take Ava, disappear. He shook his head. You don't run from wolves. You kill them before they find the den. His voice was calm, but there was exhaustion under it, the kind that came from carrying too many ghosts. Luke, she said quietly, this will never end if you keep feeding it. It ends when I make sure no one can touch her again. And what about you? She asked. Who protects you? He looked away. I stopped deserving protection a long time ago. Mara felt a chill move through her. He wasn't planning to survive this war. He was preparing to burn with it. Later that night, as the guards rotated watch, Mara sat on the balcony outside her room, the wind cold against her skin. She thought about everything he'd said about the fire he kept walking back into. Then she made her decision. Down the hall, Ava was fast asleep. Mara packed a small bag, just clothes, cash, Ava's favorite stuffed rabbit. She knew Luke would never let them go willingly. But she also knew that if they stayed, he'd destroy himself protecting them. She left a note on his desk, written in steady handwriting. You've given enough. You've saved us both more than once. Let me save you this time. At dawn, she slipped into the garage, started one of the cars, and drove toward the outer gates. She was less than a mile away when the road suddenly filled with headlights, black SUVs, cutting across the lane like shadows. Her heart pounded. She hit the brakes, but it was too late. Armed men surrounded the car. The driver's door was yanked open. A rough hand pulled her out. Miss Quinn, a voice said, cold and amused. Mr. Vitoli sends his regards. Before she could scream, something sharp struck her temple. The world tilted, then went black. When Mara woke, her head throbbed. She was tied to a chair in a dark room that smelled of oil and rust. Chains rattled faintly in the distance. The sound of dripping water echoed somewhere above. A man stepped out of the shadows, older, with sharp features and eyes that gleamed like glass. Mara Quinn, he said, smiling. The woman who softened the devil. You're Vitoli, she whispered. He nodded. My brother died cleaning up your mess. Lang. You took him from me. So I thought I'd take something from Vale. He'll come for me, she said. I know, Vitoli said calmly. That's the point. He gestured to a phone on the table. When I call him, he'll bring what I want, the codes to his offshore accounts. His empire, traded for your life. Mara stared at him. He won't. Oh, he will, Vitoli said, lighting a cigarette. That's the thing about men like him. They destroy everything except the ones they love. You've become one of those. He exhaled smoke and smiled. And that's what makes you useful. Back at the mansion, Luke stood in his study, staring at the note she'd left. His hands shook as he read it a second, then a third time. Jonas entered quietly. We found her car, he said. Empty. Vitoli's men took her. Luke's voice was a whisper. How long ago? 4 hours. Luke turned toward the window, the morning sun catching in his eyes like firelight. Get everyone ready. Boss, if we go in blind. Then we die blind, Luke said. But we're going. He reached into the drawer and pulled out a black pistol. If she's gone because of me, I'll burn the whole city to find her. Jonas hesitated. And the girl? Luke's voice broke for the first time. Mrs. Rowan stays with her. If I don't make it back, tell her the truth about her father. The old steel factory on the south side hadn't been used in decades. That's where they found her. Luke's men surrounded the perimeter quietly, engines off, waiting for his signal. Luke stood in the rain, his coat soaked through, eyes fixed on the building ahead. His pulse was steady. His purpose, absolute. Inside, Vitoli was on the phone. Mr. Vale, he said, his tone smooth. So nice to finally hear your voice. Luke's reply came like thunder. You have something of mine. Not for long. Bring what I asked for. Or I'll send you what's left of her. Luke's jaw tightened. You won't touch her. Vitoli laughed softly. We'll see. He hung up and turned to Mara. Your hero's on his way. You should be proud. She glared at him. You call yourself a man? He smiled. I'm a realist. The door burst open before he could say another word. Gunfire exploded across the room. Luke stormed in, flanked by his men. The first bullets hit Vitoli's guards before they could react. The air filled with smoke and shouting. Mara ducked as a bullet shattered a pipe above her. Steam hissed through the room. Luke moved through the chaos like a storm, precise and relentless. His eyes locked on her. Mara. She struggled against the ropes. Luke. A guard lunged toward her, gun raised, and Luke shot him before he could reach her. He cut her bindings with his knife, pulling her to her feet. "Are you hurt?" "I'm fine," she said. "Behind you." He spun and fired again, the last guard dropping to the floor. Only Vitoli remained, standing near the doorway, bleeding but smiling. "You can't kill me all," Vitoli hissed. "There will always be more." Luke's voice was ice. "Not after tonight." He fired once. Vitoli fell. For a long moment, there was only the sound of rain on the metal roof and the hiss of leaking steam. Luke turned to Mara. "You shouldn't have left." Her voice trembled. "I was trying to save you." He cupped her face in his hands. "You almost did the opposite. I couldn't let you die for me, Luke. And I couldn't live if you did." The words broke something between them, the barrier of fear and guilt that had held them apart for so long. He pulled her into his arms, and for the first time in years, he held someone like he was afraid to let go. Outside, the first sirens began to wail, echoing through the night. Chapter 14, The Revenant's Redemption. By the time they reached the mansion, dawn had painted the sky in pale gray. Ava ran across the hallway the moment she saw them, tears spilling as she clung to Luke's leg. "I thought you were gone," she cried. Luke lifted her gently, pressing a kiss to her forehead. "Not a chance, little one." Mara smiled, exhaustion soft in her eyes. "We're both home, Ava." Luke carried his daughter to bed, staying until she finally fell asleep. When he came back downstairs, Mara was waiting in the study, standing by the window. The first light touched her face, and for once, she didn't look afraid. "She's safe," Luke said quietly. "So are you," Mara replied. He gave a small laugh. "For now. You could stop, you know," she said. "You could walk away from this. From all of it." Luke poured himself a drink but didn't touch it. "And do what? Pretend I'm not what I am?" "You're more than that," she said. "I've seen it." He turned toward her, eyes tired. "You see what you want to see. I see the man who risked everything for his daughter. Who saved me more times than I can count. That's not nothing, Luke." He didn't answer. He just stared at her like he didn't believe it or didn't think he deserved it. Finally, she stepped closer. "You once asked me if I thought people could change. I still do. And you think I can?" "I don't think," she said softly. "I know." For a long time, they stood in silence. Then Luke took a slow breath and set the glass down. "If I walk away," he said, "it can't just be me. It has to be us." Mara blinked. "Us?" He nodded. "Ava, you, me. Somewhere quiet. Somewhere we can breathe again." "You'd leave everything?" "I've built empires before," he said. "But I've never built peace." Mara smiled, tears in her eyes. "Then maybe it's time." He reached out, brushing a strand of hair from her face. His hand lingered for a second before he whispered, "You changed everything." "You let me," she said. That evening, Luke's men gathered in the courtyard. The order was clear: burn every file, erase every name, close every account. The Vale Empire was finished. The ghost of the Revenant would vanish into legend. When the last car left the property, the mansion fell silent for the first time in years. Luke stood beside Mara and Ava in the garden, watching the sun sink behind the city. Ava pointed to the sky. "Look, Papa, the first star." Luke smiled faintly. "Make a wish." "I already did," she said. Mara looked at him. "What did you wish for?" Ava grinned. "That you'll both stop being sad." Luke's throat tightened. He lifted her into his arms. "That's a good wish." When Ava ran ahead to chase the fireflies, Luke turned to Mara. "So, where do we go?" "Anywhere," she said. "As long as it's away from here." He took her hand. "Then let's start over." She squeezed it gently. "No more ghosts." He smiled. "No more ghosts. Just us." As night fell, They left the mansion behind, 3 silhouettes walking down the long road that led away from the life they'd known. Behind them, the lights of the Vale estate dimmed, swallowed by the dark. Ahead, the horizon stretched wide and new. And somewhere between shadow and dawn, the man once called the Revenant began to remember what it felt like to be alive. And that was the story of the beggar who saved the Kingpin's daughter, a tale of redemption, love, and second chances in a world built on darkness. If you felt every heartbeat of this story, don't just scroll away, hit that like button, drop your thoughts in the comments, and tell me what moment hit you hardest. Subscribe, because the next story might just be even darker, deeper, and more unforgettable. This is Velvet Romance Stories, where stories never sleep.